I know goddamn well you were thinking of colonizer-free astrology and the predictions that I put out. I told you fascism was going to return. I even said celebrities are quite literally getting taken out. I told your ass a great war begins in 2025 and boils over in the 2030s. And most importantly, astrologically, we are in the downfall of colonialism. You don't have to like the way that I deliver the messages, but you know deep down, every prediction only gets more true as time passes. Now, saying all that, let's resume our candid cosmic chit chat about this moron behind me, because as we analyze his charts, it becomes very clear not was only this shit all predestined, this is a great lesson about fuck around, find out, and the importance of karmas and paying them off. Grab a cup of cha, get comfortable, let's have a candid cosmic chit chat. Now, in part 2 of our series, we're going to be analysing this moron Saturn placement. Now, Saturn is always going to be really important when we look at your chart because it shows your blessings, but likewise, some of the deepest karmas that you carry and the work that you have to do to progress with life. If not, this is how we also work out in the ways that you will be punished or the kind of difficulties and challenges you will face. It also gives us inclinations about the legacy you will leave behind once you have completed this life prematurely or not. So, his Saturn is a sign called Dhanishta, that is Aquarius type 1 to 2. Look, Dhanishta's Shakti is the power to bring fame and recognition. Dhanishta is also heavily tied to the entertainment industry. It's tied to politics, ironically, war, weaponry, sciences, teaching. So again, we can see to a certain extent he was always predestined to be a political entertainment figure. And because the Rasi chart symbolizes the immature self, that's all he was ever going to be, was an entertainment figure. As we saw in part 1, this is someone that has contradictory beliefs, is constantly searching for answers, but the more they search, they get lost. And ultimately, he's predestined to have a fiery transformation of beliefs. And I don't know what gets more fiery than a fucking bullet. Now, Saturn in Dhanishta deals with having to serve others, but the person really struggling with their own ego. Ironically, it tries to teach people how to be more tolerant. We can assume that the karmas were not fulfilled. Now, what's so interesting is this form of Aquarius is ruled by Mars. So we have this unique experience where the soul is actively trying to fight against forces that are stopping it from growing. You know, in this sign, we see people who have a lot of internal conflict, which is very on brand for everything that we discussed in part 1. So again, when you met Charlie Kirk originally, he had what we call Reagan's flavor of conservatism. And then when he aligned with Trump, he kind of went against all of his initial values and beliefs. And you know, currently they're speculating that he once again was wising up in terms of how much he had betrayed his beliefs, but because he had accepted money from certain sources, because he'd built a platform of stuff that kind of was counterintuitive to what he really believed deep down, he was almost stuck. And again, like I like to emphasize, Vedic astrology is a religious practice. These charts are just a reflection of your karmas, and until you process them, they're you know, you can't scapegoat facing your karmas. You can't manifest past them. You have to take them on. And again, that happened here. Look, even when you look at Dhanishta's religious scriptures, it deals a lot with the importance of who we partner with and whether these people bring out our best or worst traits. Now, saying all of that, I want to go through a list of times that not only can you see Charlie Kirk visibly struggling with his own beliefs, but how his ego even backfires on him. So again, his organization, Turning Point USA, was really founded to promote free speech. And essentially, he was trying to argue against council culture and bring back open debates. However, when he started aligning with Trump, here comes the contradiction. He began firing staff who made fun of Trump, even though at one point he himself was a critic of Trump. And then he even began creating essentially a hit list against professors, academics, activists, young voices that essentially were fighting against fascism and oppression. Obviously, he designed that to intimidate them out of speaking. And again, this is very contradictory to someone who believes in free speech. I remember what I say about karma, because I find it wild that he got taken out with a bullet to the neck at his own conference. Even my second example, this is someone who believed in minimal government interference. And towards the end of her life, he literally became a MAGA extremist and believed the government had the right to interfere to uphold a culture that was reflective of American interests, which again goes against his beliefs. So imagine you've gone from advocating for governments to stay out of people's ideologies, their personal affairs, what they learn, to then wanting using the government as a weapon to indoctrinate others. Even my third example, right? He was very open about you should uphold your values regardless of the leader. However, soon as he aligned with Trump, every time he would change his beliefs to support Trump's policies or propaganda narrative. And it lost him respect amongst his own, because Lord knows this man never had ours. Think of it like this. This is someone who openly was like, release the Epstein files to like, I no longer want to talk about Epstein. Isn't that funny? Now let's look at ways that his egotistical behavior backfired on him. No pun intended, but... So again, this is someone who was like anti-China as soon as he aligned with Trump, even though he originally believed in free markets and big business. And he was so critical against TikTok. However, his company, Turning Point USA, leveraged TikTok to grow its own community and audience members. So again, people started mocking him for preaching one thing but evidently practicing another. So in 2021, Kirk organized this rally called Cancel Culture. He hyped up as this big event. Basically, no one turned up. And then he started crying about sabotage. And the university was like, no, everything was really accessible. We didn't take down any posters. Like, people just didn't show up. That's gonna hurt the ego. His dumb ass even supported like January the 6th. And everyone was like, what are you doing? This is extremism. And as soon as it didn't look good to an audience, he backtracked. And the biggest thing is, this is someone who went from wanting to unite conservatives to literally like, I don't know, creating like a terrorist party to attack other conservative people who didn't basically show blind loyalty to Trump. Now, saying all of that, it leads me to the other point I made about the importance of who we partner with. In fact, let's concentrate on Danishta's most important lesson about who we choose to align ourselves with. Actually, let's go back to Danishta's most important lesson, which is who we choose to align ourselves with. Because at some point, the assassin who took him out was actually a part of a group called Groupers who Charlie basically influenced. But then they tried to eat his face off because they felt like he was not white nationalist or the type of Christian they were wanting. He was a sellout. So again, when they first joined, they both loved Trump. They were both very much like America first in terms of ideology and wanting to rip down the establishment. However, you should never underestimate a hater's ability to hate on you. So when Nick started promoting Israel, you know, the groupers are so fucking racist and anti-Semitic, they couldn't stand that shit. They started resenting Charlie because he was taking on big donations from kind of public figures, and they were saying, no, you're part of the system, you're not a revolutionary like us crazy white nationalist Christians are. Thinking of Garmers, before he was even taken out, these little weirdos would turn up to his events and treat him like the same people that they used to demonize together. Currently, Rahul, the planet of assassinations, violence, and the beginning of turmoils, is currently going through the 9 types of Aquarius, which means it's transiting over his Saturn and his first house. Long story short, your karmas are really vibrantly reinforced. The point I'm trying to make here is the following. Can you see the different types of garmas behind how all the ideologies he supported, he championed, he enabled, in the end, created his demise? Part of me feels like there's a divine irony about how he blindly supported Trump, that even after he passed away and people asked him how he felt about Charlie, he brushed it off. He's like, oh yeah, I'm fine now, but have you seen the ballroom in the White House? You know how wild it is to be taken out by the same ideologies that you defended so heavily, and all you had to do was be more tolerant, less dickheadish, align with better people, and you could have quite literally saved yourself. But because you were so embroiled in hate, when Saturn came to visit your beliefs, bada boom, bada bing, you experience them in their totality. This is why I tell you, astrologically, we're in the downfall of colonialism. And so many people are going to have a hard time because they are going to have to confront how they are complicit and enabling colonialism in all its different forms. And in the end, you will learn it was never worth it.